Hello fellow bookworms, ever wondered what a reader sees when they read? Well, for me, it's a little underwhelming. Before I show you what I see, the first thing I want to talk to you about is aphantasia, or should I say aphantasia. What is aphantasia? Close your eyes. Trust me, just for a minute. Think of a book. See it? What colour is it? What's it sitting on? What's it called and how clear is it? If you can see something, anything, that is Fantasia with a PH, not the Disney cartoon Fantasia. If you can see Fantasia, great. If you see nothing but blackness, that's Aphantasia. You can open your eyes now, I'll allow it. Now, I don't have aphantasia. I don't even know if you can say I don't have aphantasia, or whether it's, I don't know how you're supposed to kind of work it into yourself, because it sounds like a condition, but it's not. It's just kind of a way a mind works rather than a condition. Even though I'm not aphantastic, my pictorial imagination is very limited, and it can take a lot of work for me to conjure up anything much at all. It does have its good days and bad, but it's different when I'm reading. So first I'm going to take you through what I can conjure up with my imagination, and then how that works for me when just reading. At its worst, just blackness. Blackness with coloured blobs shifting around, kind of like a disco, but mostly I can just see like a tiny section of something with a very dark filter over the top, surrounded by a huge vignette, which for those of you who don't know what a vignette is, it's a ring of shadow that surrounds an image. They're not usually this exaggerated because it's a tool that filmmakers use to subtly direct your eye where they want it to go. I can weirdly see the clearest around the bottom left-hand side of my imagination. Don't know why that is, it's a thing, but I can do things to improve it overall. So it helps if I have a reference I'm familiar with to pull from. So if I'm in a fictional world but set, say, by the coast, I know what the sea looks like, so I can pull from that. But in general, I'm better with landscapes than people anyway, because characters are just usually shapes in the murk. For characters at the worst, there is just nothing. Sometimes a vague shadow, and sometimes I can see hair. So I've been doing the artwork to see what my imagination looks like, and it's more nightmare fuel than I anticipated it being. I swear it's not that scary in my head. I swear it's not. It's just that how can you obscure features without like blacking bits out? Oh my god. Sorry? The reason why the eye is uncovered is that sometimes I do see eyes very clearly, and I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but the other thing I forgot to mention is that I can quite clearly see bright colours really well, and things like bright blue eye colour will stand out. If you were to say to me, Obi-Wan, I could conjure up a flash of Alec Guinness, but he would quickly distort, and mostly what I'm left with are the colourings of his character. What are really useful in books are illustrations. I love those. If a book has pictures, I can at the very least hold a faded image of the character in my head. Once I start reading, most of that goes and I'm back to flashes of stuff, but those flashes are at least a tad more detailed than if I have to scramble for them from scratch. Even so, seeing characters moving and talking isn't a thing that comes easily. It sometimes happens, but not much. It's generally a series of stills. I don't see mouth movements at all. Mouths seem to always be shadowed out. I can do better on audio, but only if I know a voice well, and even then it's generally when I'm trying to sleep. Mostly audio is just a distant rumbling. When I realised that others can see these hugely vibrant worlds full of light and sound and depth, I felt hugely self-conscious about it, like there must be something wrong for me not to be able to think like this. And I felt that way for years because there was no way I was about to end my misery and just, ask. Because every time I spoke to a reader, they were like, oh yes, I can see these huge worlds. And it was just like, I'm not going to admit that I can't see that. But then I found out about aphantasia. And although that's not me, it made me realize that mental sight, much like visual sight, is a spectrum. So I began to talk about it. But talking about it to readers, other readers are a bit like, how could you enjoy a book properly if you can't see it in your head? What happens in your brain? And I sort of mumbled something not very helpful, but basically vibes, for one. I'm very emotion-based, so a writing style is very important. So I'm very into a lyrical style of writing that builds, ebbs and flows and carries you along on the pure joy of words being written just the right way, because that is just chef's kiss. That is, oof, that is the stuff right there. There is more than one way to enjoy a book. You don't need to see it. You can feel it. You can be in it. It's really lovely to hear the kind of the lyricalness of words just flowing together. That in itself is just a lovely thing. But if the words do float me in just the right way, I can imagine little snippets and flashes, just enough to bring me into a world. It may be dim, but it's there. And occasionally I also hear things like the splashes of water or the creak of a ship. Occasionally I sense things like texture or taste or smell. With Binti, for example, I actually did hear her voice whilst reading, which is kind of rare for me. I don't know whose voice it was, but for me to hear a voice, I would need to have heard it before. And whoever you are, you have a lovely voice. So thank you for the loan of that from my brain for Binti. But I imagine best when there are no other distractions, and that often includes reading, unfortunately. I can't really tell you what happens in my head when I'm really pulled into a story and I just stop seeing the words, because I mean, I think the best I could describe it is like an audiobook that you can sense, if that makes any sense. If I were to hear it properly, it would obviously be all in my voice with different inflections and accents as necessary. And there are kind of the odd disjointed flashes of images. Nothing stays for very long, because when you're reading quickly, the images move fast and my brain doesn't do movement very well. So basically I just kind of get little flashes of things, kind of nothing very clear, mostly color, sometimes kind of like a character in a still pose, sometimes just mostly actually the little orbs, because my brain doesn't deal with images and motion very well. When a scene lingers, I can catch up and I can have like a picture in a book. It's kind of like that, not as defined obviously. And then it sort of jolts about. I swear I enjoy this. I don't know, it doesn't sound very enjoyable at all now that I come to say it out loud, but it is. I enjoy it. It's fun. Again, there's very little movement. If I see a whole picture, there's no detail, and if I see close-ups, there's minimal detail. But the vision... Hello! A cat has entered the room. Coming in. Boop, boop. No. This is my kitty. This is my cat. She is Meow. This is Purdy. Isn't she so gorgeous? Isn't she so gorgeous? Yeah, isn't she? So wanting to get down. Okay. I will let you get down. Whoop. There may be some random cat noises from now on in, so brace yourselves for that. Anyway, do I feel like I'm missing out by not being able to see in my head? Yeah, absolutely I do. I would love to be able to imagine whole new worlds as clearly as others can. Even if it was just kind of to see what it was like for a bit, because it sounds really cool. I mean, yeah. But yeah, I'm happy with what I've got, I guess. I don't know any other way to be, so why wouldn't I be? But now I have heard that you can train to improve your mental sight, and whether this is true or not, or to what degree, I don't know. But who knows, my reading may be the reason I have as good mental clarity as I do now. Sometimes it's kind of a bit disruptive when I first start to actually see anything when I'm reading, because sometimes I'm very aware that it's there when now it's not. So it's like, oh, I can see this bit. But you know, that soon fades and I'm just along for the ride then. It's like there's more than one way to read. You can have an audiobook, or you can have Braille, or you can have a physical book. So it's the same with imagining. Whatever gets you to that state of just being on another planet, literally, in your head. Even if it's just, you can feel that you're on another planet. But I will say one of the big downsides to this visualization problem, other than the terrible sense of spatial reasoning, which I didn't even realize I had until I started to learn to sew, but that's a whole different ball game. Anyway, because I have this tendency to read the book and then immediately move on to the next one without really holding the story in my head, I don't think I'm getting the best out of my reading, because it's hard to kind of conjure up the images afterwards, because it takes a moment to remember what I've read, especially when I'm trying to conjure up the memory of the vibes and fit it to the visuals, to the words. Unless a story is so fantastically great or terrible that it just sticks, it slips away. And I've read so many books in my childhood that I just have no memory of. I do find it easier to reflect on a thing when I've written about it, or at least thought about it in a way that I might if I were to write about it. And that helps me process things and helps me remember that I've read the thing. So I'm hoping that this channel may help with that a bit more. So I don't know any other fellow readers who struggle to visualize things. So if you're one of them, please leave a comment and let me know how you get the most out of your reading experience. I'd be fascinated to hear about it. But whatever your visual level, I'd be interested to hear about it because I find this fascinating. I really do. But whether you leave a comment or no, stay spiffy. And next up, I'll be doing a tour of my bookshelves. So if you want to see that, drop a sub and give ears to the notification bell. There are 4 generations worth of books on that shelf, so that's a lot. If you want to see, yeah, come along with me.